Welcome back to Autism Live. Nancy and I are here in the studio with Jan Blacher, who I have heard about for the longest time. You have credits that are 68 pages long.
We were to go through them, it would take a half an hour.
Yeah, it would. But
well, come on, I didn't have a wheelbarrow. I carried them in.
Yes, you clearly are an underachiever. Let's hit some of the highlights here. That you have a PhD in special education development psychology, and you currently are an associate dean of the Graduate School of Education at the University of California, Riverside. But you also have a joint appointment as the distinguished professor in the Department of Psychology at UCLA.
Correct.
Such a sloucher you are. And you are the director of something called Search, which is a family autism resource center that we're going to talk about in just a second. But on top of all of that, you are now the executive producer of a film that I keep hearing about on a daily basis that's called Autism Goes to College. I get goosies even thinking about that. And everybody's been saying to me, you did a screening that a bunch of people saw, and I'm not kidding you, I had at least 8 or 10 people write to me and say, Shannon, you got to see this, you got to have Jan on the show to talk about this. We're very excited. So welcome.
Happy to do it.
Should we start with Search?
Maybe we should start with Search.
Okay.
So Search is an acronym. It
Okay.
stands for Support, Education, Advocacy, Resources, Community Hope.
Wow.
It's a mouthful, but the original donors of the center also endowed us with some PR and graphic people and marketing people, and they came up with that. But it really defines our mission very clearly. And our mission began, around 2008. And at that time, there were no autism services in the Inland Empire. It was just a wasteland for everybody. But for non-English speaking, low-income, underrepresented families, it was, further than a wasteland. And even fast forward 11 years, we're still lagging in terms of LA and Valley or Orange counties. So our latest mission is to go beyond Riverside to the Coachella Valley and the desert. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that work, I don't know. Okay. But that's what Search is, and we offer a free screening diagnostic clinic. We prioritize families who are poor, low income, Spanish speaking. We use the gold standard instruments to diagnose autism. And that's been our main community mission. And one last thing, and I'll turn it over to you. The one thing about Search that's unique in the University of California system is that it's a true community university collaborative. We offer this free service to the community, and my goal as a researcher and professor is to train doctoral students to do research with families, to do research with children and families who are touched by autism. So we use Search as kind of a living laboratory where students get trained, they implement some research. We also offer this service.
Wow. It sounds really impressive. And then through this, you had something called Autism 101, which I understand it was like the groundwork that led to this incredible movie. Tell us about how that happened.
So, I have a number of grants, and one of them was what we called Autism 101. And, for much of my career, I've studied something called student-teacher relationships. And I began studying those in autism. I'll cut to the, spoiler alert. What we learned was that children with autism who enter school as young as kindergarten would have relationships with their teachers that were more conflictful and less warm than children even with intellectual disability. Wow. And those were far, far worse than typically developing children. Just one of our 5-year-olds with autism said to us, school is the meanest place on earth. And that, has propelled me to 9 or 10 years of a grant studying that. But it occurred to us that there were students at UC Riverside on the spectrum, which we found out through another research project, which was surveying autism at UCR. And I began to wonder what their relationships with college professors were. Sort of extrapolating from what we knew from K through, let's say, age 13 or 15, what happens when they get to college? And that's what the Autism 101 project was. We wanted to both learn how they interacted with the professors, but what did professors know about these students? Did they even know they had autism? If so, did they accommodate them? What happened? How did they feel about it? And that led to a series of studies of both the youth's experiences as well as faculty who may or may not have had them and what they thought about it.
Wow. So then you get to this film. Tell us about the film.
Segue from that.
Yeah.
So we couldn't believe the richness of the data in interviewing these students. I'll give you one anecdote. One of the students was recruited to UCR because he was a gifted scientist, going to be a gifted chemist and physicist. Knocked the ceiling off the scores. He was recruited. The university didn't know he had autism. And as a freshman, you have to take all the introductory courses, and they all have labs. And the professors required every week for the students to switch lab partners. Now, as you know autism, and I know autism, getting to know someone socially is a big deal, even for a college-age kid.
Yeah.
And to have to repeat that for 10 weeks, every week in the quarter, was so stressful that this young man dropped out of sciences, became like an English major.
Wow.
And I look at it as the field lost. A potentially gifted scientist, a creative young person with all of his quirks and funny personality who was brilliant. Wow. So when he told us that, I thought, you know, what's going on? Who do you call? You call your friends. I knew a documentary writer and director who you need to also have on this show.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Eric Linthorst, who produced a documentary called Graham's Story. One of my favorites that I use with my students.
Okay.
And coincidentally, Eric happened to be a graduate of UC Riverside.
So Kismet.
So Kismet, and I'd already reached out to him before, and I said, Eric, could you come out and film these students, and we could do this great YouTube and put it on the search website, and that would be very, illustrative. He came out, and after 2 hours, he said, forget your YouTubes. You need to find money. I need to find money for a full-length documentary. This stuff is too rich and too good.
How did you decide on the 5 students and how you?
Well, I'll give Eric some credit for that. Okay. So what happened was 2 years later, what was going to be an afternoon of filming of my subjects became a 2-year project following them. Some of them we handpicked from the Autism 101 study. And as we got into it, we thought, well, we ought to maybe sample outside of UCR. And what about the Cal States? And I had some contacts, so we contacted them and said, do you know anyone who might be willing to? Then we put an ad in the papers, and we had tons of people who wanted to be in a movie. Wow. And Eric and his team vetted a lot of those, because as you can imagine, there were people that didn't even have autism that responded to the ad because they wanted to be in a movie. And that's how we got the 5. It's actually 6. There were 5 that were followed for the 2 years, plus Alex Plank, who was with us the whole way. You probably know Alex. I read that he's been on here. So he also was filmed around the student-teacher relationship and his experience in college. He was part of the original filming. And then the director moved on from there. Wow,
really impressive. Now, you told us a story that I want you to tell our viewers about something that happened on the day that the film premiered.
Right, so the very first day, I happened to be in an IEP that morning for a 5-year-old. My specialty seems to be 5-year-olds that I followed. I was a consultant to the family. It was a big court case, blah, blah, blah. And as is often the case, the team turned to the parents and said, what are your goals for your son? And Dad surprised me by saying, I'd like him to graduate, do well, and go to a 4-year college. And the entire team just sort of, their faces collectively blanched, and they looked at me as if to say, what do we do with this unrealistic dad? Now, this little boy happened to be high functioning, and I knew was very capable of going to a four-year college. So I asked them to please turn off the tapes. They're always there in contested IEPs.
Yeah.
And I said, let me give you a public service announcement. Tonight at 6:30 or 7:30, after the reception, we are screening a documentary called Autism Goes to College. And I gave them the 2-bit summary, which I think you know, and you can give or I can give. And we had a little discussion about it, and it was like this burden was lifted off of the school people's shoulders. They rallied around the film, they thought it was a great idea, the mood lightened, and we had a very successful IEP. Parents got just what they wanted, I felt good about it.
But I think it's significant that, you know, there are parents that are watching right now and they know what it's like in an IEP, and they feel often that the staff at the school maybe underestimates their child.
Absolutely.
But you don't know, because these are supposedly your experts, right? So you leave a little confused and down. I know at Jem's first IEP, because we both have boys on the spectrum, at his first IEP, I got into it with a woman who said to me, what do you want for him? And I said, I was short thinking. I said, I want him to go to kindergarten on time and be ready, and I want him to be in a class with his neurotypical peers. And she looked at me and she was like, oh, you know, that would be really
what
hard.
What a pipe dream.
Right. She said she goes, that would be really hard. And I said, don't talk to me about hard. I'm already dealing with hard. I want to hear what's possible, and I want people on my team who can do that. I want to hear what's possible. And they don't really like to talk about that overly much, because I don't know that they know. So I just wanted all of our viewers to hear from you that, you know, that you were seeing that at an IEP meeting too, and that we can change their minds.
How can we accomplish the shift in thinking, though, on a wider scale?
Well, I have some positive takeaways or for that. I've recently completed a 4-year grant funded by the Institute for Education Sciences in the government. And that was a study of the transition to early schooling for young kids on the spectrum, ages 4 to 7. And we learned a number of things about that. One is that many of those kids actually start school at or above their neurotypical peers in reading and early literacy skills. Teachers were totally unaware of that. And had very low expectations for these children when they entered. Now that grant studied a myriad of things we don't have time to discuss, but one of my key variables of interest was the student-teacher relationship. And I shared the anecdote with you about the 5-year-old who had a rough go at it. Fast forward, it just got refunded for 5 more years. And what we got refunded for, based on the earlier research, was to develop an intervention for regular ed teachers who have children with autism in their general education classes, in how to develop this relationship and how to really understand these kids and what they're capable of, and have it be a successful integrated experience.
That's wonderful.
So get back to me in 4 years and we'll have something really concrete.
I'm going to be bugging you before that.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, so back to the film. Give us the summary of what we've talked a little bit about, that there are multiple people. Give us the summary of what people should know and why they should go and see it.
Well, I mean, right off the top, you know, Eric Linthorst and Jody Becker, who are the 2 writers, are brilliant. I mean, this is really a film that, you know, it bridges the didactic autism films, of which there are all too many, I might add, and a true kind of film festival artsy document. It falls right in between.
Okay.
It is creative and clever and funny and warm, and people who have been afraid of autism walk out of there feeling warm and fuzzy about autism. It really does follow 4 young people into their journey through school. Plus, I'll explain who's looking back at his experience in school. So it's a wonderful perspective to have. They're not all through. They're at different stages of college. They followed one young man, not only through graduation, they were at the graduation, filming as he got his diploma from the chancellor of UC Riverside, who hasn't seen the film yet, and I keep telling him he has a cameo, he's got to go see it. And so each, you know, we all know the expression, if you've met one child with autism, met one child with autism, each one of these 5 have a different journey. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. I was had a long day at work yesterday. Each one of these 5 have a different journey, and they talk about it. They talk about the challenges they had. One might be with the professors, one might be with some interpersonal challenges he had on campus, dealing with, let me just say, his lack of self-regulation and how he almost got himself thrown out of school. Others have sort of internalizing struggles with anxiety and depression that they overcame. One is just on the cusp of getting accepted into a 4-year college, coming from community college, and so on. They're unself-conscious. They show their true selves.
Is it safe to assume that they're all high-functioning in the film?
This particular film targets youth who are competitive for 4-year colleges. So yes, they are high functioning, they have no intellectual disability whatsoever. Their IQs are all in the normal to highly gifted range, but they vary, and they vary tremendously in their autism symptomatology. From Jonathan, who, you know, I can use their names because their last names are in the film, who's probably the most symptomatic, but who is so gifted in graphic arts and has tremendous independent living and adaptive skills. And it's so unself-conscious on the film, you just, you know, you fall in love with all of them. But to, you know, some more sophisticated views, 2 of them, or several of them already have jobs. One parent joked that, Jay, on your next documentary's got to be Autism Gets a Job. So who knows? This is one of my 9 lives as an executive producer, so maybe I'll have, you know, executive producer times 2. I don't know.
Maybe, or times 7. So I'm sold now. I was sold before. I want to see it, but how and when?
Okay, I'll tell the viewers to get online at www.autismgoestocollege.org because we're posting each screening, local screening, as they occur. There's information on there for people who've already grabbed it in Canada, back east, north, south, east, west, who want to screen it. For the local audience, it's screening June 6th at UC Riverside. Reception at 6:30, the film will show at 7, and it's screening at UCLA Monday, June 10th. In the Tamkin Auditorium. So there's a lot of PR out for that as well.
But if somebody has an organization or a group that they would like to screen it, they can go to the website.
Yeah, they can. There's a place where they can get more information, and we don't post all of the details. They send us an email, and we have a whole fact sheet. So people have contacted us from autism organizations, large and small, countrywide, as well as statewide. High schools, private high schools, 2-year colleges and 4-year colleges. And I might add that we are hoping more high schools will look at this because when the film was done, we realized the potential, as especially with the people who were coming to the screenings, for high school counselors to really think about this when, you know, either transition plans are done in high school, and many of these kids, you know, don't have transition plans because they fly under the radar in high school. So.
Well, and because parents don't know and aren't advocating.
That's right.
Because we've seen a lot that I didn't know about the ITP process until when our
So
sons were like
your sons
teenagers,
were that age,
right,
right?
right?
Exactly.
But we heard about it not from school to start with. We heard about it from having people on the show who were like, "Well, have you done the ITP thing?" And we were like, "Come again, what?"
Right.
But then we both went in and said, "Where is that?" And then the school was like, "Oh, it's right here." But the first time it got mentioned for both of us, I think, was that it came from us.
Right.
I usually tell parents, and I work with a number of parents outside my jobs, another life I have, but I usually tell them by age 12,
You should have an ITP.
Legally, they might not be able to get it. The school might duck it, but I try to get them thinking about that ITP.
Yeah.
However the school, sometimes it's an IEP for transition. They all have different names.
Right.
But start thinking about it. Where do you see your child
Yes.
after high school?
And there's and I think starting early is really the key for everything,
For
right?
everything, right?
For everything.
Right.
Start early. Okay, so and is there a place that people want to know more about you? Do you have a website that's just you, or they should go to the film?
I do. They
Okay.
can go to, we have www Search Center,
Okay.
and we have, of course, the Graduate School of Education, GSOE website at UCR. So easy to find me. Not so easy to reach me, but easy to find me
Well,
online.
no, you're too busy living your 11 lives.
Right. I'm
amazing.
ducking all my many offices. That's why we have cell phones, right?
That is why we have cell
But
phones.
thank you for finding me and
Yes,
getting me
well,
on here today.
Good luck with
It's
the film.
so
It
much
sounds
fun
like it's
talking
off
to
to
you.
a great start.
And you had been on my radar before, but honestly, I've never had as many people say you've got to have this person on the show, honestly. Like all within a short period of
Right.
time. It was just like, we saw this, you got to do this.
They came to the film, and I hope I'm going to look for you June 10th, Monday evening, UCLA. It's online, and it's directions to parking. The advertising of the film,
Right.
which is everybody's fear about UCLA's parking.
Parking.
Okay.
Right.
Almost as difficult as it was to park today.
Oh, yes, no, I was going to say, we have difficult parking here, too. But I thank you so
Okay.
much for
Yes,
being
thank
here
you
and
for
for doing
coming.
this amazing work.
Thanks.
And we're constantly working on we want to do a thing called Autism in the Classroom. And so we will have to invite you to be a part of
Absolutely.
that. Okay.
Absolutely.
All
Thanks
right.
so
Okay,
much.
thanks
still
for
making
being
that
here.
Thanks.
All right, stay right there because we're just going to close out the show here because there isn't enough time to go for a break. But I just wanted to thank our guests and thank
Right.
Nancy for being here with me. And make sure that you watch on Monday because we've got an amazing show, amazing guest. Bonnie Yates will be back to answer legal stuff.
Okay.
And of course, it totally slips my mind, but it's somebody that I was like, ooh, this is so exciting on Monday. I'll make sure that I post
So
it.
an exciting show. It'll be a surprise.
I know exactly who it is now because I
Okay.
remember because it's Memorial Day and we're
Okay.
still doing a show
Okay.
on Memorial Day. We're pre-taping it. It's Spec Labs. That's
Oh,
who's
Spec
coming.
Labs,
Spec Labs
okay.
is coming, and they're bringing some of their students, and they're going to be talking about their new Spec Fest, and they're always
Right.
so much fun.
Yeah.
Super excited to have them on the show. So that would be really cool. Tune in on Memorial Day, and of course the shows you can watch them later on if you're busy on Memorial Day. We podcast. Did you have a question?
I was just going to say, maybe one of the principals, I don't call them actors in Autism Goes to College, but we call them principals,
Yes.
also might be
We'd
interesting for you
love
to have on your show.
Absolutely
that'd
love
be
to.
great.
Absolutely love to. Yeah, we'll pen that.
Have them
Okay.
anytime.
All right.
Okay.
So until Monday, and I hope everybody has a safe weekend who's celebrating the weekend until
a
Monday.
wonderful Memorial Day.
Yes. Give your kiddos a hug from
And
me.
yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching Autism Live. To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.